Welcome to a special edition of the Listen to This Bull live show. My name is Matt Mulholland. This is the show that we talk about bullshit in the insurance world. And if you join us live, you get to ask questions live. And so you can ask questions of Hunter. I just got a pop-up issue. Hang on a second. Tech problems. Let's see what's happening over here. Facebook says I can hear you just fine. Question is whether or not this is going to. Interesting. Facebook doesn't want to do it. Facebook doesn't want to allow us to post. I wonder why that is. Well, it's fine. We'll remove that. Hopefully people can find us. It's still going on all the other pages, though. So I have Hunter Adams in studio with me. Well, he's not in studio, on the program with me. And Hunter Adams is with a company called Detach and Reset Solar. So we're going to talk about solar panels and insurance claims today, right after I click this button. Perfect. So how are you doing, Hunter?
Oh, man, I'll tell you what, it's been a great storm season. We're, up to our ears in, all the insurance work. And, it's definitely a blessing on the contractor side. And it's just great to be able to help these homeowners, get their homes and office buildings restored.
Yeah. So your company is called Detach and Reset Solar. For audience sake, pretend they're a bunch of kindergartners, because I'm pretty sure that's what my audience is. Tell them what it is that you actually do.
Sure, absolutely. So, our business is it's exactly what our name states. We're a solar maintenance company, and basically when a catastrophic event comes in, whether a hurricane or a hailstorm, and warranties a roof replacement or roof repair, my company comes in and we detach the solar panels from the building or house, and then the roof gets replaced and all the other restoration happens, and we put these solar panels back on.
So why can't the roofer just do that?
That's a great question. Most roofing companies, they are, strictly have a roofing license or general contracting license. And the detach and reset falls under electrical. So we have to be an electrical contractor in order to do so. There are a few roofing companies I've heard of that actually hold both licenses, but it's rare. So we typically come in as the electrical subcontractor or contractor and, carry out the work.
Does that void warranties for the solar panels at all?
That is a great question. So it's very similar like a roof. Like the material and manufacturer, they hold their warranty, and we issue a brand new 10-year labor penetration workmanship warranty. So the manufacturer warranty does not change. There may be a very, very special circumstance where there's a company called SunPower, or there's, I think, maybe two other large ones where they actually manufacture their own panels. But in most circumstances, 99.9% of the companies, they use other manufacturers' equipment. So they're just they're just a labor warranty on that.
When you detach these solar panels, is there any building codes that have updated that would make you have to not reinstall them or not allowed to reinstall them, something along those lines?
That's a good question. And depending on the state you're in, like we're based out of Colorado, but we work in multiple states: California, Texas, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, and Illinois. And it just depends on the county jurisdiction. But, there are solar panel systems we run across that are, 10 to 15 years old. And, back when the city inspectors were not aware of these codes, like fire setbacks, for example, the panels have to have a 3-foot fire setback from the ridge of the roof. And, in rare circumstances, there is a building code that requires that to have that space for, in case there was a fire at the house. So the firefighters have access to that. That's just one of the building codes. I mean, there's several, that now require just different, making sure the racking is installed properly. And, back in the day, there wasn't too many codes, available. And now all the NEC, the National Electric Codes, coming out with, multiple codes. The city inspectors want to come out and take a look. Hey, how is the system installed? Are there any changes that need to be made to the system to keep that system up to code?
So, I mean, how often do you come across a system that you're having to detach and it turns out that they're damaged? Do you actually do any kind of a damage inspection as well when you're detaching them?
That is a very good question. And the answer to that is yes. A lot of times there's visible damage from the general contractor roofing company. And when we request a bid, they send in the photos and we see if there's any visible damage, or if they just say, hey, there's, 6 or 7 broken panels, or hey, there's one that looks like it has water damage, or, Hurricane Ian got in, the water got in the electrical box. It looks to be damaged. And, it does happen. A lot of times we don't catch it until we actually do the detach on the detached portion, and we start taking the panels off, and we actually can see visible damage to these panels. And in that case, then we would warrant a supplement to the insurance company to repair that issue, whether it's a panel or a micro inverter on the bottom of a panel, or a pool panel's just ripped apart, or a thermal panel's cracked. It could be a variation of a lot of things, but most of the case, it is broken panels is what we see the most of that the storms cause.
So if a contractor were to come across a claim that has solar panels on it, I can tell you from my experience with Hurricane Ian in Florida, right after the storm, I got on a lot of roofs that had solar panels on them. And I was looking at the solar panels specifically. I wanted to see what kind of damage they got from a hurricane to see if any of them got damaged. And I found exactly one that had a loose bracket. So the brackets held up really, really well. There were scratches on the glass or the polycarbonate or plexiglass, or whatever it is, from windblown debris. But none of the panels were active. So I wasn't able to use an infrared to be able to see if any of the cells had been killed. But overall, they held up really well. And the roofs that they were on also held up really well. More so than the rest of the roofs in the area. So I would imagine a lot of times a contractor might get up, take a look at the roof, realize there's nothing there, but they don't necessarily know how to identify if there's damage to the solar panels. So what would you recommend that they do if they just want to see if there's anything there at all as part of the roof inspection?
Sure, good question. And most of that is going to be, like you mentioned, is going to be actual physical damage that you can actually see. And that would warranty, a supplement to the insurance company of possibly replacing a panel, or, a piece of hardware or anything like that. As far as internal, now when we do a system diagnostic, anytime we detach a system, we have a 27 point checklist that we go through, which allows us to see, voltage, amperage, resistance, to see, if there potentially was any water that got in the panels. Was there anything damaged? Are there microinverters that aren't reporting, back to the system, the monitoring system? So many times we catch it on the detach, and like you said, is because a lot of roofing companies, they're getting more familiar by the day with solar, but they're not necessarily apt to realizing what a damage inspection looks like, or even how to inspect a solar system.
Do you often have hail damage to these systems? Is that an issue that you're dealing with a lot?
So
Do you only get involved when it's just
question.
detach and reset?
Very great question, Matthew. And the answer to that is typically what we see is, in rare circumstances, about 1 inch hail will, it can do damage if the system is a little older. If it hits, an area on the glass just right, it can shatter that panel. However, most of the times we're typically looking at 2 inch hail and above that will break the panels. Around 2.5 inch hail is where it really starts to beat on those panels and starts creating fractures in that glass, is really when you start seeing that happen.
What about even if it doesn't break the glass, is there any damage to the cells when the glass kind of pushes down and hits the cell?
Very good question. Yeah, and like I said, if some of the tools you guys as public adjusters use, you can definitely see those micro cracks in the panels, and there's definitely damage there. Now, can we warranty a replacement on that? Absolutely. Absolutely. If there's
You can
any
warrant
micro
for
fracture.
hail?
Yep.
No
Absolutely.
kidding.
Yep.
Huh. So are they rated? Are they are they class rated like shingles are for certain size hail, class 4 rated, something like that?
So that's a really good question. And they don't really have a hail rating. However, most manufacturers are required to test 90-mile-an-hour golf ball size hail to be shot out of like a hail. I think you guys have that hail cannon, which is super cool.
We
They
got a few,
actually
yeah.
shoot that at the solar panels, as a durability test. So they do have a durability. Like, I mean, in 99% of the time, the roof is what's getting the most damage. The roof is nailed in, to the decking, whereas like the solar panels are nailed in to the rafters, which, you have to have a pretty catastrophic storm to have those solar panels ripped out of the rafters or the brackets to come loose. It's got to be, usually 100+ mile an hour wind, more like 120 to 130, to get, have those panels start, shaking the hardware loose. And then they may start coming up. Hurricane Ian, we were doing about 3 to 5 detach and resets a day over there and we still are. And, we probably out of 500 or 600 jobs in Florida, we had probably 12 to 15 where solar panels were brutally just lifted right up off the roof and just were smashed in the homeowner's yard. Or we even had one that was a ninja star and it just stuck right in the next door neighbor's siding like a ninja star. I've never seen that before. That was interesting.
Is it a real ninja star?
It pretty much looked like it. The panel just had stuck, diagonally right in the
panel became a ninja star. Man, that would be pretty cool.
It was like a ninja star.
I want to see ninja weapons on roofs more often. It's really a shame that doesn't exist. You would think that ninjas would be on all roofs all the time.
Well, I mean, in a sense, the guys, I would say so, but I'd say anybody, that has the kahunas to get up and do roofing or solar on a roof or anything roof work, I'd say there practically are ninjas up there, man.
We found some weird things on roofs over the years, but I've never found a ninja-like weapon or any kind. I found knives. I don't know if I would call that a ninja weapon necessarily.
Wow.
We found some really disgusting things up on roofs too.
Yeah, we have too, for sure.
Yeah. I had a guy that used to work for me that whenever he found something on the roof, he would bring it back to the office. And he had this collection that he would pile up on our desk adjuster manager's desk. And it was just this pile of just random crap. But some of the things he's found on there were really interesting. But we ended up with like 4 Stretch Armstrongs, if you remember that toy. I don't know why. Yeah. It doesn't make sense, but we had 4 Stretch Armstrongs and several other things. But yeah, so this is probably the case. That's neck tattoo, built different. I like the name. Ninjas don't lose weapons. That's got to be true.
I'd say so.
That's the only way that this works out. I've found bullets. Ninjas don't use bullets. I've found darts. I've found a lot of Nerf gun stuff, and obviously, sports balls, all different kinds. But when you take a panel off of a roof, where do you put it?
Very good question.
I knew you were going to say that.
There's several answers to that, and the number one reason, the number one thing we see is, all the components of, solar are for the most part waterproof, unless they have a penetration or got, hit by a storm or something like that and they get water inside. But they can be stored outside, in the homeowner's yard in a safe place or a back patio. Some contractors prefer to rent a on-site storage container, so there's no like
Yeah.
liability in case a part goes missing or something like that. So they can be stored and supplemented. You can definitely get insurance to cover on-site storage, or even I've seen off-site storage where homeowners say or contractors, hey, you know what, we're doing 7 or 8 trades on this house. Take them to an off-site, take them to your warehouse, Hunter. We've seen that. And then one of the most common safe places that we recommend is the garage, being stored in the homeowner's garage if possible.
Yeah. So is there a lot of theft if you just leave it in the yard like that?
So no, we've done probably somewhere above like 7,000 detachment resets over the last 3 years. And I can't say anybody has gotten anything stolen. We've had homeowners in kind of sketchier neighborhoods say, hey, I want these taken off. I want these stored somewhere because, someone may steal these. And I tell them, I don't think, anyone's going to steal solar. I don't think it has a value at a pawn shop. But no, never stolen.
You're not going to
Some
copper
things,
or anything. Yeah.
exactly. Some things we have seen are roofing guys take a piece of the solar off of the roof. There's a solar deck box. So one thing that's important for contractors to understand is a lot of times if there's any components left on the roof to the solar, it's typically only one thing, and that's the solar deck box, and it sits on the roof and it feeds the conduit down to the homeowners through the homeowner's attic to the outside of the house, or sometimes the inside of the house, to keep the roof looking clean for the homeowner. So they don't want the conduits on top of the roof.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean,
Yeah,
people
yep.
they care quite a bit about aesthetics. Do you ever have people that want to change where the solar panels are after you take them off?
Oh, all the time, 100% of
Okay.
the time. I mean, we run across, people's homes where they put the solar company sold them a system and they put it in the shade next to the homeowner's house, and we're like, you could get so much more production if you shifted it over to the south side of the house. And we move panels all the time. We add panels a lot of the time if homeowners are not getting enough production from their solar to offset their cost. We add panels all the time. It's a very common adder. What we get asked after an insurance claim, since they're already doing the work, is, hey, let's add 3 or 4 panels. Let's see if the inverter will actually be able to support if we add more watts to the system. So it's very common.
Okay.
Good question.
Yeah, all my questions have been good so far.
I'd say so. I definitely think it's important to educate, just educate the average homeowner, educate, roofing, storm restoration contractors, public adjusters about, solar, because it's now part of storm restoration. It's a trade, where, people didn't think that panels, when these solar systems are sold to homeowners, no one really says, hey, by the way, if a catastrophic storm comes in, there's a chance you may have to have these taken off and put back on. And no one really expected that, up until, 5 years ago is when we started seeing it more and more common, especially states like California and Colorado. I mean, Florida's got a lot of solar. Texas has a lot of solar. So, and it's just becoming more and more common.
We're seeing, I actually saw a news article not that long ago, maybe like a couple of weeks ago. It was saying that a lot of people are being dropped because they have put solar systems on their roof, because the policies aren't written in such a way that solar panels are covered, or at least for those carriers, they don't cover solar panels. Have you seen a lot of that issue at all?
Great question, Matthew. And yeah, I mean, the answer is yes, especially in Florida. I mean, in Florida, you have to have their insurance policies are very detailed and they're very strict. And if you don't have solar panels in your clause, many times the homeowner has called us and said, I can't, I have to pay this out of pocket because it's excluded in my coverage. So very common in Florida. But most of the time, if you have a set limit on your policy, they cover, I think it's up to $350,000 or something in Colorado, and they cover all the solar. But I'll tell you one thing that is becoming more common is new policies. Now that insurance companies are aware of solar in storm restoration states, because it is a big cost to add to the claim, is they are becoming more adamant to write that, have that, pay an extra fee to include the solar in your policy. So we are seeing that more and more common, but mainly Florida is where we see it.
Yeah. Most. There would have to be, for a policy to say that they don't cover it, there would have to be something specifically written in there. These are mechanically attached to the dwelling. They're part of the dwelling. Unless it specifies that they don't cover those kinds of systems, then it does. But I think the insurance companies are realizing that they should charge more, or the policyholders aren't telling them that they're installing these systems and now they're underinsured or something along those lines is going down. But what is the cost like? Is Xactimate decent in pricing for what it is that you do?
So that's a great question, and the answer to that is yes. Xactimate, it does pay pretty good money to detach and reset either solar panels or pool heater panels or solar thermal panels. There's several line items you can get from Xactimate for solar, and there's actually several more that I think need to be added because there are variations where it doesn't have it listed. What needs to be done for the work order. Right now, I think there's the most common 3 line items you see are it's the detach and reset, and then you have the remove and replace mounting hardware, or detach and reset mounting hardware, which really the remove and replace mounting hardware should be correct, because you don't reuse any of these pieces. The only things you might reuse are some of the mid clamps, but as far as the flashings, the L feet, and the lag bolts, you need to replace those. And then the other line item that I don't think a lot of people use is the special systems electrician hours, because you have to have supervision of a master electrician to be able to do these jobs, sign off on these jobs. So those are 3 common line items that Xactimate has for those. You can also add steep pitch, steep, whether it's over 712s or over. I've seen that. One thing they don't have, that I think they should, are the specialty roofs. Like a lot of times in Florida, or just really anywhere, there's companies that their niche market is they take asphalt shingle and then they go for the stone coated, like the teal core steel, or they do a tile roof instead, something a little more durable. So then we have to, replace the racking system to put that on. And it's much more difficult to install a solar system on a steep pitch or a specialty roof, especially like slate or even what is that rubber roof called? The
EuroShield?
EuroShield, correct.
Yeah.
EuroShield. So that requires
that one I would bet would act a lot more like an asphalt shingle, though. If you've ever actually played with one of those, they're super easy to cut. It's one of the easiest roofs to install ever, honestly. But I think it would be fairly simple to find a way. And if you have peel and stick under the entire roof like they do in Florida, that could cause things to be a little bit easier. But I'm curious, if it is a tile job, are you cutting a hole in the tile and making like an area for the mounting bracket to go down, or are you still I don't even know how you would do that. Is it just like question. A little flashing setup?
Yeah, that's a great question. And those are super. A lot of solar companies, they won't even touch. They disqualify the detach and reset on roofs like that. But we wrote out checklists and systems in order to be able to detach and reset on those special types of roof, like tile and till core roofs. Which can be very, very tricky. But yeah, typically my recommendation, since we're not a roofing company, we do have a lot of working around roofing knowledge, but I always like to ask to have a roofer on site, or even ask the insurance company, say, hey, we need an expert roofer on site. We need to get, some hours for a specialist on site in order to supervise this, because cuts do need to be made on the tile, or on till core stone coated steel, you have, they're very difficult. You have to unbolt to walk in the channels. A lot of times you have to unscrew those tiles, the till core sheets, and then you have to replace them. So we typically do ask for extra materials to be ordered, and same thing with tile, because when you're walking on these roofs, and especially installing solar on top of them, it is not uncommon to damage a few of the tiles, or a few of the pieces of till core. It's not uncommon. So those are really tricky circumstances where I think the insurance companies definitely need to be aware of some of these specialty roofs. 100%.
I wonder sometimes whenever someone says expert roofer, and you're asking the carrier to send one out, it's always interesting to see who it is that they send, because it's always going to be one of their preferred vendors. And then you get to see their preferred vendors, and they're just often crap. They're just crap.
Yeah.
But, they don't know. Insurance adjusters don't realize when someone's good or bad. It's just from personal experience. I've had too many of those where you ask them to send out a qualified roofer, and they're getting all pissed off at you or your contractor for doing a bad repair job, saying that's repairable, you're just too aggressive. And then they send someone else out that you request them. You send someone out, let's see what happens. And they're so much worse. Oh, it's terrible.
Sure. I mean, yeah.
What kind of bullshit is there, though? I mean, with claim related stuff, do you ever have a lot of denials or a lot of pushback on certain things?
For the most part, that's a great question. I mean, here and there we do, but I would say, if we're asking for something additional, I would say we have, I would say no. It's we get pretty much everything we ask for. We don't go too much over the top. But if we need something, we have an expert. We have an expert electrical engineer. If they want to question, anything that we think needs to happen as the solar experts in storm restoration, we have an electrical engineer that is on our side and supports our work 100%. So if they question anything, we have him on deck to stamp a letter or anything we need that needs to get done. So I would say no, as long as we're prepared, to deal with the insurance companies, that we're pretty prepared.
So no problems at all.
Not too many.
An expert involved, I guess.
Not too many. Some issues we see, like Liberty Mutual, and who are the other two companies that use the Symbility as their software to
Safeco. Liberty, Safeco. Off the top of my head, that's all I know.
Yeah, and they're a little more challenging because they don't even really put enough money in there just for the materials alone on a solar detach and reset. But they usually they don't our bids.
What kind of materials do you need? It's all labor, isn't it?
That's a good question, and so the answer to that, no, it is a lot of labor, but you're looking at about anywhere from 8 to 15% of the total job cost in materials, which would include lag bolts, flashings, potential L feeds, critter guard that needs to be repaired. That's the mesh wiring that goes around the system to keep birds and squirrels, and I've even seen raccoons get under these systems and just tear it up. But it is about 85 to 90% of it is labor. Correct.
Yeah. Got a comment from the audience that brings up a question for me. It says, in the long run, opens up possibilities of further damage from repairs that should be replacements. Often we get arguments from carriers about something being repairable, or we'll only pay for repairs. We're not going to pay for replacement. There's only so many damaged shingles. When you have damage under a solar panel, access to that damage is necessary, which is why they're paying for a detach and reset. Sure. But if it's a repair, for an insurance company, they want to pay for repair or replacement, whichever is cheaper. But the detach and reset of the solar just to get to a repair might be slightly more expensive than replacement of that slope, but I would imagine there's such an additional cost there that you get closer to the cost of a full replacement anyway. Is it cheaper to detach and reset solar panels if there's just going to be a repair versus a full replacement? Do you ever do that?
Absolutely, absolutely, especially on tile roofs where the homeowner hasn't maintained it. Those are more retail calls, that aren't necessarily associated with insurance. But there's a lot of solar systems where they didn't seal these systems properly, and they used that cheap caulking instead of a 30-year caulking, which we use on all our jobs. And they go back, the first thing they do is call the roofer, and then the roofer comes out and they're like, oh yeah, it's your solar system. And then the solar company that did the original install says, no, it's the roofer. And then they're kind of fighting back and forth. And then a third party company like mine gets involved and says, well, we're going to have to do this repair. But in nine out of 10 cases, it's a retail, the homeowner's paying for it out of pocket to fix that leak.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of crap happens all the time, man. Insurance companies do it too. If you get a new policy and then you file a claim, the new adjuster or the new carrier say it happened during the old carrier's time. Then you get a hold of them, you file a claim, they say, no, this damage happened after you changed policies. And then they just keep passing the buck. Everyone does that. During, I remember this one claim I was helping out with as a consultant recently. The little old lady had damage from Hurricane Ian, and there's wind damage up there, but there's also installation errors like crazy. And so she's got a warranty problem because a lot of this is definitely more related to the roofer doing a terrible job than anything else. But there is also wind damage. And then on top of that, there was manufacturer defect with this roof. The thing had some major delamination going on in places. So she had 3 different people she could call, and each one of them in reality would have resulted in a new roof replacement. The wind damage because the roof wasn't repairable, the installation issues because the guy did a terrible job over the whole roof, and then the manufacturer defect because it was widespread in different areas. Either way she went, she could have gotten a brand new roof, but every single one of them pointed to the others as being the problem and that they had nothing to do with it. And I was just, what a nightmare for someone to have to deal with. Anyway, sometimes just passing the buck is bullshit. You know what I mean?
Oh, 100% bullshit. I've seen it happen many times.
Yeah.
Many times.
How dangerous is it to install it? Do you guys put in anchor points or anything for the electricians that are up on the roof? Or
Absolutely. I mean, we want to maintain an OSHA compliance as well as workman's comp compliance. Those are huge deals, especially, working in solar. I mean, I see a lot of times that, companies don't abide by those, but, compliance is extremely important and having a plan, bless you, and just having a plan for that.
Man. There's a lot that's going on there. I remember when there were solar panels on some of my roofs many, many moons ago. I haven't handled my own a full claim in a couple of years now, just doing consulting. But I remember when those got involved, it was a $12,000 ordeal just to detach and reset the solar panels before we got to the $20,000 roof. It could be as much as 50%. Is that still roughly the cost?
Yeah, sometimes? I mean, we're seeing, as far as Xactimate, pricing goes, I mean, yeah, they're getting up $350 to anywhere from really $300 to $400 a panel seems to be the average, cost to detach and reset the solar panels, which is one reason why we typically don't work directly. In Florida, we work a lot with homeowners, but in other states, we act as the subcontractor for the roofing company and just give, a flat rate of what we do, which usually ends up being 20 to 30% under insurance, because they're contracting the claim out. So it's really what the roofing company or general contractor wants to do. One thing we see in Florida a lot is we need to educate a lot of these GCs and roofing companies. They're passing that. They don't want the liability of the solar on their plate. So, they're saying homeowner, deal with this. And then it just becomes a nightmare because one, they lose control of the timeline on the claim, but two, the homeowner can't get through to these giant organizations that installed the solar on their house. They're designed to just install and that's it. Install, new install. They don't have checklists. And, for detaching and resetting, we have a whole training program that needs to be done. And we see that happen so often where the roofing companies get frustrated. They schedule the roof out like 2 months. They give the homeowner, they say, okay, we'll give you 2 months to get your panels off. The roofers show up and they're like, the solar is still on. And then the roofers start taking the solar off, which is a huge liability. It's a huge liability. Because then you can't come back and warranty the work, because the biggest thing when you're detaching the solar panels is you have to have documentation. You have to have the measurements. You have to know where the rafters are, and you can't hit that same lag hole in the rafter where you went before. That's got to be sealed, and you have to move it down or up a couple inches, and that's just the protocol for these. But that's why we wrote the systems and processes to be able to do this specific work.
Do you have a lot of competition?
That's a great question. We're the largest company in America, and we're not like extremely large, but this trade is becoming more and more common. There are some big ones that are not necessarily big, but there are companies that are catching on to this trade, and they are, they're trying to specialize in this trade. But as far as, no and yes, kind of. There's companies that do both, but there's really rarely companies that just say they do detach and reset work. And it's the only work we do is detach and reset, and then we do maintenance work on solar panels, like you mentioned before, picking them up, putting them back down to do a small repair, or the homeowner cannot. Their system's not functioning properly. My electric bill's, $50 higher than last month. What's going on? So we run out, do a system diagnostic, and figure out, what piece of equipment isn't working on the system. What's going on? Is there a pinch wire? And that's why we are a solar maintenance company, and there are very few and far in between that just do maintenance.
Yeah, I wonder if you're going to end up with a lot more competition going forward. But I'm curious, though, you ever have people want to detach for moving? They want to take the solar panels with them after they sell a house or something like that?
So that's funny you say that. We probably get at least 1 to 2 calls, or maybe even 5 calls a month, about somebody that they're in love with their solar system. They want to pick it up, take it with them, and it happens all the time. We do jobs like that all the time. And then my recommendation is just leave it, get a new system on your new home. But that sometimes they don't want to deal it, or it's usually when people are moving, and the old homeowner doesn't, or the new homeowner doesn't want the solar. So then we'll say, okay, we'll just take it down and get rid of it. Some of them just want it gone. Some homeowners, I don't want nothing to do with it. Sounds like a headache to me. Okay, we'll take it down, not a problem. And then some just take it with them, and then they put it on their new house, and we have to, get plans again, re-engineer it again, and then put it on their new house. So the answer is, that happens more frequently than you think.
That's really interesting, because from a policy perspective, that means that it could be treated as personal property instead of dwelling coverage. So you could have completely separated coverages for the solar panels. Personal property is stuff that, and I've heard it described this way many times before. If you took a house, you turn it upside down and you shook it, it's all the stuff that would fall out. But that's not true, because a lot of people would take certain appliances with them as personal property to move. It's anything that you would take with you after you sell. That's your property that's going with you. So if a solar panel might go with you, I don't care if it's mechanically fashioned to the dwelling or not. If it's something you might take with you, then it could be personal property. It's definitely
honestly, that's a great argument. That is a great argument. Yeah.
So that's interesting. So if you guys ever have any issues with solar panels and your insurance company, they're saying that they're going to get rid of it, you can say, well, no, that's not part of the dwelling. That's personal property stuff. We're going to take it with us when we move and everything. So that would be
that's a unique way to put it.
Yeah. So you can get the coverages that you need when your insurance company has some issues for you. But be careful. Like a lot of the personal property stuff
Sure.
either is named peril or ACV only anyway. So it would be. I've gotten this question a few times. Who's got the best solar available today? Do you know?
Yes, I do. My opinion on this is key. So I mean, solar is a tech world, and companies go out of business left and right. When somebody asks me, like, Hunter, I want to get new solar on my house, I say, I recommend going with, some of the manufacturers that have been in business the longest. I would say the best companies out there are probably bigger companies like SunPower or companies that have been around. Power. They're backed by a lot of funding, and the chances are, because the biggest issue you see in solar today with the problems that come about years down the road is somebody says, "Oh, well, my company went out of business." What good does that do? You know what I mean? So if you go with a company that has been around a long time and plans to be around a long time, that's probably the best way to go about it. Find one that's been around. Is
Do
my
you think that
recommendation.
the manufacturers of the panels make much difference, or are they all roughly the same efficiency?
In my opinion, I don't micro differences, don't make a huge difference in my opinion. I just think picking personally, I like American made. I like American made or Canadian panels. Silfab, Q-Cell panels are great. Anything that's made here, I think the warranty times and claims are a lot better. And I think that's a good answer to that question.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering if anyone from the audience has any more questions related to claims and solar panels or anything outside of that. Feel free to put some questions in the comments. We can help you out. I'm running a bit dry. It seems like it's fairly cut and dry. If you have damage to the roof and there's solar panels on it, they need to come off. There's an access problem. They need to get them off somehow, and it has to be from someone qualified. There's not that many people out there. They could call the original installer of the panels, but a lot of those guys, they don't even do that, or they're gone. So they need to call someone, and you might be one of the only ones that's available. Are you nationwide?
We're pretty close, man. I mean, we have, traveling crews that can work the entire Midwest. But most of our locations, there hasn't been too many jobs where we haven't been able to take care of them in multiple states. We have several master electricians on the entire East Coast, Midwest, California. So we're pretty widespread. We have availability. We're pretty much in most places, but most places where there is solar is, there's an abundance of solar, which is typically, the sunshine states, which are biggest ones: California, Colorado, Texas, and Florida are four top markets for sure.
Yeah.
Illinois did pretty good up there too as well.
I'm surprised you don't get Oklahoma with a lot of them too, being so open. I got a question from Jesse McCorkle. And I don't know if you're not really selling panels too much yourself, are you? But how are they handling the rising interest rates for solar projects?
That's a good question. And, there's a big decline in solar sales right now. I just talked to the CEO of Solar Insure the other day, which is the largest solar insure. They insure solar panels. Like when a person gets sold solar, they insure, a warranty on the panels. And he actually predicted that 30 to 40% of installers would actually go out of business. And this is one of the reasons why, is because I think they're at like 37% dealer fees right now. And the rates, it just doesn't make sense for some homeowners. There's not, with the high interest rate, there's not as much savings. We really got spoiled during COVID with, the low interest rates, and people were just going crazy. Everyone was home. Oh, I want solar. And then, now things are tapering off and there's a huge decline. We've even seen, very large companies like Green Home Systems. They're just having a lot of issues internally. They're a nationwide company internally, as far as just the amount of projects they've been able to do. So it's definitely affecting the sale and the production of solar, for sure.
Is the dealer fee from the finance company or the distributor? Where's the dealer fee coming
From the finance company.
So it's an origination fee kind of a deal.
Yeah, basically, like if the finance company is saying, yeah, I'll give you a low interest, 2, 3, 4% loan, but we're going to add a, dealer fee, like she just mentioned, dealer fee of now they're at 36 to 38%, which is just like, they're like, oh, we want that on top of it, So bank loans, I think the best way to go is, and granted, we don't really sell solar. We help if someone asks us, we say, look, here's a good resource. We have one person in our company that likes to sell it, but we strictly stay on the operations and maintenance side. But they, it's kind of a mess right now with the bank, so it's just not making a lot of sense in certain areas.
That's really a shame. You'd think that there would be a lot more government push for it, especially with all the new requirements for different countries getting into net neutral emissions and all that kind of stuff. But whatever, I guess.
That's why they call it the solar coaster. It's just kind of up and down.
Solar
It's tech.
coaster.
It's tech. It's a tech industry, tech's up and down. Tech's up and down.
We're gonna ride the sun today, boys. Get on the solar coaster.
Yeah, it looks like you got a question.
All right, so John asked, what about sheathing issues like multiple layers or nails and racking hardware weakening the deck with multiple penetrations? I think where he's asking is, if you were to take a roof off, shingle roof off, and install another shingle roof on the same decking, the nails are going to be in roughly the same place as they were before. Well, if you're going to put the solar panel back on, is it going to go in the same place? And are they going to be in areas where the nail holes are already existing, therefore a little bit weaker than before?
This is actually a great question, and we work, when working with public adjusters, things, we look at the finer points of things. Roofing contractors, they're kind of like, oh, we just want to get all the Xactimate line items, and that's it. We want to get the project done. But when we work with public adjusters, we have a specific manner, and I agree 100% with the gentleman that asked the question. Is there's giant holes, like when you hit a penetration. So the original penetration in the rafter, that leaves a huge hole through the decking and in the rafter. And honestly, in my opinion, that warrants replacement under all of that decking of the entire system. Really, honestly, the roof. Yeah. I don't know why insurance companies don't want to pay for decking every time, because there's all those nail holes in there, which are susceptible to a huge leak. And we have a specific letter that we have ready to go with public adjusters, with an electrical engineer, saying, hey, if we reinstall this system, we need to have this replaced because of that specific reason right there. It does weaken the decking 100%.
Yeah, there's
even ice and water shield underneath the solar array is another thing that we get. When we get in with public adjusters, those are things that we really want to ask for when we're going to go all out on the claim and make sure that this is done in a proper manner.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably some requirements for what kind of decking, but you're going straight into rafters anyway. Is there any kind of a truss system that's a problem? The trusses aren't designed to have a special amount of weight at specific intervals on the roofs. They were designed for, the roof covering. But if you're adding weight specifically to a truss system, do you have to have an engineer out there to design that, to make sure it's going to be
question capable? And it's from the original installer. So every system has to have a structural engineer stamp on it.
Okay.
In areas where there's high snow, they have different requirements, and different areas have different wind loads. So the structural engineer has to take a look at, all variables and say, yes, this can hold this, or no, it cannot. But a solar system, if you think about it, a panel is probably, I've never weighed it, but, I lift weights and stuff, and I want to say it probably weighs 60 pounds. I should probably weigh one. I got one behind me right here. But it's 60 pounds and it's spread out throughout. The racking is not very heavy, but it's not, it doesn't, when you get up there,
it would absolutely require it. If it was more than 3 pounds a square foot that you're adding on, then you would have to have it signed off on by building official or a structural engineer or something along those lines. But that's just like a rule of thumb that's built into the code. Anytime you're changing anything, if you're closer to the design load limitations than the average roof, then it would take less additional weight to cause some issues. But that
Sure.
is interesting to think about. I wonder if any of them are acting as airfoils on roofs as well, especially if they're really close to the eaves where the wind is coming up and over because there's already lift coming up. It might actually act almost like an airfoil and produce lift on the top of it and lift up the bottom side of that panel.
Oh yeah,
If you're
we've seen
dealing
it
with wind.
done. Oh yeah, we've seen it done. Even on poor installations where they miss the rafter, and go straight through the decking, or a decking only mount. That thing will it'll start to lift. Once you get 90-mile-an-hour, winds consistently.
Oh, I bet.
It definitely,
Yeah.
that's a huge
If you're
issue.
not in a high wind zone area and your rafters or your trusses, they're not secured to the walls, if there's no strapping, then even if it is installed on the rafters, there could potentially be some issues, especially with a derecho, or I can never pronounce it right. I don't know what it is. It's one of those. That would be really, really interesting. Unfortunately, I didn't see any of the panels with damage in Hurricane Ian. I stopped at people's doors. I was knocking on doors. I was like, I just want to look at your solar panels. I'm doing some research on this for a class that I do. And they let me up there just to do that. I didn't find anything other than scratches and things. And none of them were active, which was crazy. The whole point of the solar panels is to be able to have power when no one else has power, right? You're producing your own. None of them were activated because they hadn't been signed off on yet by the city. They were all brand new systems.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Definitely.
well, I really appreciate your time. There's probably going to be more questions that are going to be asked in the commentary after this airs, which is live right now. But after this becomes something they can go back to. So if you'll keep an eye on the YouTube post and answer their questions, they can get a hold of you that way. But just for everyone's sake, what is your email address?
Hunter@detachresetsolar.com.
Is it cool if I post that?
Absolutely. I love answering questions. I love learning, the public adjusting side. It's an angle we really want to work this year, is getting more involved with PAs and educating on both sides. You guys educating me on exactly, what, the things in the industry, the new innovations and stuff, and myself as well, educating them on the solar side of things.
Yeah, there's still quite a bit that hasn't really been discussed too much as far as solar panels go. And there's a lot more digging to see how the panels are going to react to certain types of events and longevity of different things for storms. So there's going to be a lot of changes with policies over the next 10 years to start incorporating a lot more solar panels. It becomes more and more popular, but hopefully the interest rates come down and it becomes more and more popular still. But either way, I really appreciate your time. I'm going to boot you off real quick and get some housekeeping done here. Boop. So that was Detach and Reset Solar. If you have a solar panel on a roof, you can get a hold of them. I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors, the Building Experts Institute, where you can get online education for claims-related things at the moment. Claim Titan, a CRM designed specifically for public adjusters, and it's not crap. American Policyholder Association, the Huggins Law Firm. Remington Huggins is my co-host of the show, and that is his firm, and he's great in Georgia and Florida. You should get a hold of him there if you have any problems with your claims. I will see you guys next Tuesday at 4 p.m. Next Tuesday, we got Matthew Rogers, the other Matt with one T, the Matt with one T that does a podcast for the carrier side. It's like my alter ego. Evil Matt is going to be on the show next week. It's going to be fantastic. I hope you guys are able to join us Tuesday at 4 p.m. We're changing our time. We're moving it up 4 p.m. Hopefully we'll get a lot more live audience as a result. We'll see you guys then.